All right, so the title of the presentation is Improving Code Quality and Team Efficiency. And the subtitle of the presentation is, or How Not to Make Enemies at Work. All right. So Delacor is an alliance member, and we also made the VQMH. If you guys were at lunchtime, we are really happy that we won that prize. We have, who here uses VQMH? Just curious. All right. There's going to be another presentation on VQMH on Wednesday, by the way. All right, so our leadership team, we have Luis Orozco, myself here in the US, and Chris Robock is in Europe. I mean, not in Europe anymore, he's in the UK. So we also have a team of developers, both in the hardware area and software. The main things that we work on is software architectural design implementation, automated test strategy and process optimization, best practices, hardware design, test station management. The main focus is working with teams of either LabVIEW developers or hardware developers that realize, in the case of LabVIEW developers, that they're doing software engineering. Most of the people that come to LabVIEW do not have a software engineering background. We work with teams, right, Chris, where we came and talked to a test engineer, and the test engineer was complaining to his boss, I don't understand why you're bringing these guys. We are test engineers, not software engineers. And the boss said, that's why I'm bringing these guys, because you're test engineers, not software engineering, and there has to be a better way to do things. It's not possible that every time that we started a new project, we take the same amount of time or more. It's like, where's the reuse, right? So where are we coming from? We help customers troubleshoot, improve legacy code, improve their processes. We're kind of like the LabVIEW archaeologists, right? By the time we get to the company or to the project we're working on, the original developer is gone, the people that the original developer trained are gone, and we're there to write a different ending, right? Hopefully a better, happier ending, because I didn't like the original one. Anyway, spoilers. So what are you going to get from this presentation? We're going to share the Delacor way to defining how to improve the developer experience, team efficiency, and as a result, the application quality as well. So what is high quality application? How would you say this is a high quality application?
It doesn't kill anyone.
It doesn't kill anyone. That's good. Yeah. I'm gonna talk about two types of measures. We're gonna have the objective measures and the subjective measures. So I'm gonna go first with the objective because they're a lot easier. You have the ability to show what changes with each version, right? Being able to do that, that's a high quality application. All requirements are met. More than 90% of the VI analyzer tests pass, and we don't have any high priority tests failing. All unit tests pass. The deployment process is repeatable. What else? Less bugs reported with each release. All of these things I can measure, right? I have the tools to figure out and tell you if those things are being met. I hope that most of the people in this room, like everybody's using source code control, right? Who's using source code control? Okay, the people are not using it. You're gonna have to, we have to talk. I need to convince you guys. You're playing with fire. Requirements gateway, probably not everyone here uses it. It's more for large teams and when you have requirements that are very extensive and go through different documents. But there has to be somewhere where you're tracking your requirements. VI Analyzer. How many here use VI Analyzer? Okay. The rest of you that have your hands down, have you ever used it? Yes? And then it was more naggy than your wife, and you decided, I don't want to use it anymore. Okay. We're going to talk about ways to go around that. And then unit testing tools, there's a unit test framework. BLT is the build license and tracking software by StudioBots. I recommend you guys, if you haven't heard about this product, that you go to the LabVIEW Tools Network Pavilion downstairs at the expo floor, and Matthias is going to be doing demos there. We have been using these with customers. At first, the license and the tracking part was like, I don't really need that. But the tracking part has been great because you can build and deploy an executable, and then you get emails from your customers automatically when there's an error. So when they call and say, hey, I had an error, and you ask them, what did the screen say? And they're like, well, I didn't really pay attention. Then you ask them, when did that happen? You can go to the database and actually see what was the exact message that they were seeing. So it's a very powerful tool. There's bug tracking software, Jira, Fogworks, Boxilla. Anyway, all of the things that you can use to define a high quality application, there's going to be a tool out there to help you achieve that. And if you do all those things, you have 80% chance that you're going to have a high quality application.
Excuse me.
Yes?
So if you've got a team of developers that are writing the code, it seems like you've got to have a whole other army to run all these other tools and manage the software.
So that's an interesting point. So what he said is that once you start talking about, now I have a team, now I have to have another army that's going to be managing all these tools. That's the importance of selecting tools that are not going to get in the way of your team. So the reason source code control works with the teams that we have worked with, especially even the teams that claim that having a zip file with a date time on it was all they needed. Once you get trained in the good use of those tools, they're actually part of your workflow. It's like you couldn't imagine not working with them because they make things easier. The key there and where we come on when we work with teams and we work as consultants is we figure out what tools are the best for your team. For example, I'm not really a fan of Subversion, but that's what the entire LabVIEW community uses. That's what more information is about. If I have a customer that's 1 or 2 developers, they might be able to make it work with Subversion. But once we start getting 3, 4, 5 developers, distributed source code control is much better. So Git or Mercurial would be better, right? But that's going to be something that we have to discuss, and we have to discuss with your team. And I'm going to show you later why that's important. So I'm putting here just an example of Jira, and Jira is just one example. If if you're following Agile, if you go on Kanban and all those boards, you're going to have different ways of classifying where your tasks are at. At Delaware, internally, we decided that we wanted to keep it very simple. We didn't want to have like 7, 8 categories. We wanted to have very few categories for our tasks. So we have open, in progress, resolved, and reopened. And that was all we had. And then the team of developers said, there's a limbo there. Because I might have implemented the code, but I'm not ready to give it to you to review it because it has not been built into a package or executable. So now I'm stuck with something that I feel like I haven't been able to work on, and yet it's done, but it's in limbo. So as a team, we actually discussed if we really wanted to add one level of complexity, and we decided that that was going to make things easier. And everybody in the team, once we put the implemented, it was like, oh, yeah, this works. But it's a thing about deciding among the team what's going to make us more effective. So the idea here is you want to improve the developer experience by removing obstacles to get things done. So these tools should not become a burden. They should become a tool that makes your life easier. Right? I was at a presentation earlier, and I thought the same thing. When I started seeing all the metrics and everything, I was like, oh my, now I have to review code and also have to do all these metrics. Well, you have to decide first, do I need that information? If that's going to improve my process, then probably I'm going to invest the time in learning. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Okay. So some of the things that we've done in the past to remove obstacles, have an internal BIPM repo. So who here uses BIPM? All right. And you guys know you can have an internal BIPM repo. So that's great because the team can now go and has a single location to find all the reusable code. They don't have to be doing what some teams do, which is go to the last project I worked on, save as, and then start deleting what I don't need. And 2 years later, you start seeing like, what is this doing here? That was from the other project, but it was that you didn't clean enough, right? Or you end up having duplicates and replicating what you already know how to do because you didn't know where to go and look for reusable stuff. We added the implemented state in Jira. We added code review bookmark and quick drop shortcut. So now what we did with that is internally we have a BI analyzer package that inserts a new member of the palette and a quick drop shortcut. So when we're in a code review, you just do Control space RC and you enter your comment. And it seems like a very simple little thing, but that makes our code reviews more productive. And after we started doing that, there's no longer the thing where, why is this still here? We had already discussed this in 2 or 3 code reviews and it hasn't been addressed. Now you have a big orange label that says, we discussed this, you have to go address it, right? Okay, so from the customer perspective, when we work with customers, we become an extended part of their team. If we are working on helping you figure out what tools, etc., we have to kind of see and observe what is it that you're doing and how you work on those projects. If we're developing solutions, then the customer is part of our team. I've said before in other presentations, we refuse to take projects where the customer says, here's the requirements, I'll see you in 3 months. By the way, I want you to train me then on how to maintain my own code. If you are going to keep ownership of the code, you have to work with us. And that work with us could be just your just-in-code reviews. That might be the extent of your involvement. But you cannot expect someone to get 100, 1,000 MBIs, however many you want, and understand how to maintain the code if they have not been involved or heard the decisions or the struggles or the bugs you found throughout the way. So it might be kind of like a weird approach. It has worked for us. And the way we do it is, you can use several terms for this. There's all the agile terms. We have simplified it to, let's say our iteration, our sprint lasts 1 week. Monday we do triage with the customer. Friday we do show and tell. So what the triage is, let's see all the tasks that we want to accomplish this week, and then have the customer help you prioritize them. What that does is that they have a stake in the game, and they cannot come back midweek and say, but this little thing, just this one thing, come on, it should take you only 20 minutes. Yeah, but discussing it with you already took me 1 hour. Now I have to take someone outside of their forward progress to change gears so they can do this little thing that you want to add. So having being part of the team has also made a difference. Okay, so now the subjective measures. So what is a high quality application? You have end users enjoy using the application is good looking, they know how to report bugs, the end user trusts the application, end user doesn't need to know how to get all new versions, end user knows, and I'm putting their stars with the old, his needs are met, because I know that's almost impossible. And then from the developer perspective, the code meets sensible style guidelines. I use the word sensible here on purpose. I'm not saying, industry recognized style guidelines. Because what I've seen with working with different teams is what I appreciate as beautiful style might be horrible to you, right? I had one architect that I worked with that thought that I documented too much. I had never heard that before, but he thought that I documented too much. He wanted a tool that could just hide all my labels because they were distracting to him. He wanted just to see the LabVIEW code. And I was like, once I remove it, you cannot add it back. So you could probably just add something that hides it or move it out of the way and look at the code. But that was a very different style. He thought unbundling was enough self-documenting. So I don't know about you guys, but that makes me do it. Code is easy to maintain, read, and troubleshoot. So one of the things that you have to ask is, who are you developing for? Are you developing for the guys in suits that are paying the checks? Or are you developing for the guy that's on the ground actually using the application? Or are you developing for your team? If you are actually now, for those of you that are going from I was the single developer and now I have a team, there's a lot of things that change. Your mindset has to change. Because, for example, I would go and say in a code review, why are you using global so much? Well, I know that they're write once, read many. How are you enforcing that with your team? You know that. That was the contract that you signed up with yourself. How do you address that now that you have a team? I see some questions there. How can you do that? Anybody wants to? So if you put a global on a library, for example, on a project library, and you make it private, now you can ensure that only the VIs within that library can write to it. Now you have a control of saying, I can find all the places where this global is being written to. And then if they want to read it, they could have another wrapper for reading it. That seems like a crazy approach for somebody that's working on their own and is following certain rules. But when you bring in a team of developers, you're having LabVIEW be the one that reminds them what was your intention. So who are you developing for? Either the end user, customer paying the bills, your team, and that if you're the developer, that includes yourself. So, what happens sometimes? You have this little guy, the super CLA comes and asks, what are you doing? Focusing on job security. Have you heard that? When somebody starts obfuscating their code in purpose, right? This is what ends up happening when you do that. So how is that job security going? Help! I've met tons of developers that promise and swear that they know their code like the back of their hand. And then we start having weird bugs as soon as we bring more people into the team, right? And we start looking at where the bug is, and we discover that that back of the hand is a little dirty, right? It has been 5, 10 years since they did that, sometimes 3 months, but you're no longer focused on that. So we need to also avoid that. And this brings me to this quote that I have shown several times. Each moment has the potential to increase a user's confidence or destroy his trust in a product or a company. And each one is an important piece of the whole experience. So that's when you're talking about the end user. But what about your developer? Each moment has the potential to increase a developer's confidence or destroy his trust on the API or the developer that they're working with. Why? Because the task a person is attempting to complete at that given moment is the most important task. So it is our job to make sure nothing goes wrong, to make sure that moment is enjoyable and productive and helps our user feel smart. And a lot of you guys already know how to do that. What I'm saying now is if you're doing it in a team, you want to make sure that the developer feels smart and they want to work with us again and use our API again. So who are you developing for? Humans. You might feel like, oh, okay, A plus B should give me C every time. Every time you think, okay, I'm going to be on the more technical thing. We think that we're working with computers. We think that if I am logical, I'm going to get a logical answer. But at the end of the day, you're not. Is anybody here that's not developing for humans? Okay, good. All right, so I'm going to come with this crazy idea for you guys. Kindness leads to efficiency. Knowing what others appreciate as good quality software, having the tools and knowing how to use them to measure that quality and also so they don't get in the way, right? Knowing what being done means, focusing on meeting needs instead of having to worry about all the paperwork that now you want me to do. And remembering you are working with and for humans. So how do I, okay Fabiola, calm down, you're kind of like going too far out there. So how do I address this? Knowing what others appreciate is good quality software, you start doing style guidelines that are maintained by the team. You don't just impose these are the style guidelines that this team is going to be doing. If you do that, remember you're working with humans, somebody's not going to agree with something and they're just not going to follow it. You're not going to have everyone agree with every item on the style guideline, but you can at least discuss why that's important for this team. Does that make sense?
They still can ignore it.
Yeah, they can still ignore it. And we're going to see how, there's other things that you can do. Having the tools and knowing how to use them to measure quality, define VI Analyzer configuration. So for those of you that gave up on VI Analyzer, I invite you to use it again and do a VI Analyzer configuration. I'm going to show you a little bit later how that is. Where you can actually select what are the tasks that you want VI Analyzer to do. So for example, you can have a configuration for everyday coding that all it does is checking the spell checker and unused code. And maybe you have a different configuration for when you're releasing the package. Knowing what being done means, you can have a clear defined unit test that passed, that will tell you that you're done. Focusing on meeting needs would be requirements are clear. And remembering you're working with and for humans means not only deliver what the others requested, but make sure you are delivering what they needed. We have audited code of applications where the user the end user comes and tells us, oh, that application is a mess. And then we look at the architecture and it's beautiful. It passes all the analyzer tests and we're like, it's documented. The documentation is up to date. What do you mean this code is a mess? Well, this code was supposed to replace Bob, who has been working 35 years here. And when we put the application next to Bob, it was not doing the stuff the same way Bob does it. So even though we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, the application is not used. So that was someone who did all the requirements, had high quality, everything was met, but he forgot that he was working with humans and forgot to ask who was going to be the end user, who was going to be the person that was going to be actually using it, not the one that was going to be accepting it, not the one that was going to be paying for it, the person that was actually going to be interacting with the software. All right, so developing for developers. Everybody here knows what an API is? Yes? What makes a good API? It works, it solves a single problem, it does it well, it is trustworthy, it is easy to find how to use it, it is a joy to use it.
One more.
What's one more?
It's stable.
It's stable. Yeah, stable. Anyone else? No. Okay, so I did this exercise at CLI Summit. I have a lot less here, so don't worry. Everybody should have one white and one red card. And I know you're falling asleep, but this is when you are waking up. Everybody has a red and a white card? Yes? You should have gotten when you were walking in? Okay. All right, guys. Everybody here knows LabVIEW, right? Okay. Just checking. So what we're going to do is white is going to mean great developer experience and red is going to mean needs improvement. Okay, so my first candidate here, it's the file dialog Express VI. And I'm talking here about the window, the configuration window. Okay, white or red? White is great developer experience, red it needs improvement. Come on, your gut reaction, it's okay. I promise I'm not going to reform
Great
you.
or okay?
What was that?
Great or just okay? Acceptable.
Acceptable. It's okay as it is. So white is it's okay as it is. Red is it definitely needs improvement. Why we have a good mix here? Okay, who wants to defend white?
It does its job.
He does his job. Okay, in the back there.
It's like very, you want to create your own, but most of the time you don't.
What was that?
Most of the time you can just use that.
Yeah, most of the time it gets the job done. It does what it needs to be doing. Anyone else? No? Okay, red.
Help.
What was that?
Help.
You can click on help.
If
Yeah.
you really need it.
All right. Anyone with the red? Who said red? Over here? Who
You
white?
still have to wire things into it.
You still have to wire things into it, okay? But that's why I said I'm just talking about the configuration dialog option.
I think it's got poor defaults.
It has poor defaults. I would agree with that. Yeah.
The UI may not be consistent.
The what?
The UI may not be consistent with the other parts of the application.
The UI may not be. Yeah, because now you have to go into each configuration window. Okay, one more and then I'm going to move to the next.
The radio buttons do not have a clear differentiator that's actually two separate sets of radio
Yeah,
buttons.
we have
rather
two
than-
columns there that don't have a clear divider that mean that we're talking about different set of options. Okay, in my case, I think it's okay, and I use it. It's not one of those that makes me cry, as some of the other ones I'm going to talk about. All right, so this one, same guy, File Express VI, error terminal, specifically the error terminal. Red or white? The error terminal. The error output of file dialog Express VI. You've never used it?
Never used it.
Okay, well I have several
I
reds.
don't like
Most of the
Express
people
VI.
that have used it put red. All right, here's the reason why, for those of you who have not used it. There's two outputs that give you the exact same information.
Okay.
The only error that I have ever seen from this function is error 43. And that error 43 is
User canceled.
operation canceled by user. What's the name of the other output there? Cancel. So what happens with this is that it's a BI, it's a small BI. These can, I mean, and again, I'm picking up on LabVIEW because this is the code that we're all familiar with. But I'm sure that you can find similar examples on your own code. I can find it on mine. So it's where you're providing two outputs that do the same thing. You're not providing a good developer experience because now the developer is like, what do I do? And most of the times what happens is either they don't handle the error or don't handle the cancel. And who finds out about this error? The end user, yes. And it's very embarrassing that you're charging tons of money, you give them the application and they say, I canceled the browser and I got an error window. All right. So there's different ways to address these. You can create a BI analyzer test. You can actually handle the error. If you're going to do that, now you have to check that the developer that's doing that is not eating the error that's coming in. So it has to be merged on top. Otherwise, if there was an error coming in, you're going to be replacing it by the new error. By the way, I really have never seen any other error with this function other than 43. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a custom test that we have done at Delacorp. And this is a BI analyzer test. And what we do, it's actually part of a package, and we use this internally. We also have done custom versions for our customers. It includes a BI analyzer test project, and that project has also with it a configuration that's called the Delacorp style test. So when you go to BI analyzer, you select Analyze BI, then you say load previous save analysis configuration. And of course, in this particular one, you're going to have the Delacorp tests. So in your case, it will be your company name, right? Or it will be the set of tests that you want to pass. So it analyzes the code. And what I'm going to show you now is in this particular case, we had test file dialog issues. And in the code, we have an example that passes and an example that fails with instructions of how it fails. It's a lot easier to get a junior developer and say, here's the style guideline, but by the way, there's also these custom BI analyzer tests that you can run on your code, or you can run on this example code so you understand what are the things that we value and don't value as quality. So how many of you guys have custom BI analyzer tests? All right. How many of you want to have custom BI analyzer tests? Okay. So one thing that I've seen in companies and teams is you have seen the need for this. You agree that you need it. But you also have to be focusing on billable time or getting your product out the door, right? So we can help you with that, or you can find other people that know scripting, and we could just get the BI analyzer test done. For us, it's a lot easier to do because we do it every day. So if you're interested, that's my sales pitch of the day. Let me go to the next thing. Okay. Copy and paste existing code versus create sub-BI from existing code. Got reaction, white, red? Yes, wrong. Yeah, it's red. It's red, it's red. And I know I said we were going to be kind, but you should self-slap yourself every time you're trying to copy a section of code instead of doing a create sub-BI. There are situations where that's what you want to do, right? That's that you need to copy a little section of code. I'm talking about the times where you are copying a good chunk of code instead of creating a sub-BI. The reason this is horrible developer experience is I might fix a bug here, and then later the bug shows up again. And I'm like, but I'm certain I had already fixed that. Well, it's because you fixed it here, but you didn't fix it in the copy. So anytime you have that, you need to make sure you create sub-BI. All right, feed local cluster to sub-BI. So what I'm referring here is if you're using a state machine, queue message handler, DQMH, and you have a chief register that has a cluster that has the local data for the entire BI, do you feed it to a sub-BI? Is that white or red? Okay, I'm getting a good mix here. Come on, guys. I know it's late. Wake up. All right. Who wants to say the white one? Why is this a good developer experience?
Sure. So I got in the habit of doing this when I had lots of memory copying problems. Like there were buffer allocations that were happening because of large amounts of data. And so the easiest way to protect against that was to use the in-place structure to handle all my bundling, unbundling.
So, but you were handling the in-place structure inside of the SOBI or outside? So, using it for preventing memory allocations and problems with data copies. Okay. Maybe.
Limiting the size of the actual case that's actually doing any work.
Limiting the
Like
size.
like the airlocks case here is relatively small.
Yeah,
Easy to find.
the problem is that's a false sense of security. Actually, well, we'll see in a moment. Anyone that wants to do red before I go on to my.
Is it a cluster or a class?
It could be a, no, it couldn't be it's a cluster. Yeah, it should be a class. That's a different story.
I think it depends. When you change the data in here, you should do it this way. But when you don't change it and have many of these VIs, you will have difficulties in debugging when you want to find out which VI changed the data.
Yeah, so this one is an excellent point. By the way, there's a great blog that's called Walking the Wires. It's our blog. And we have an article on that. I was not referring to that, but that's a good point. If this VI is not changing the data, the cluster should not come out. Because you can end up doing like 3 or 4 or 5 different levels of SOBIs before you actually find out that, oh, I was not changing the cluster. So that's going to remove for the developer experience, the other developer that's going to be debugging your code is going to cause problems. I was going more for, this is what I've seen. Sorry. Punchline. Stall. Okay. So this is what I've seen. You start with a small cluster. You're using most of the cluster on your VI, and it seems fair, right? It's like, oh, I have everything handy here. When I come back, if I add a little bit, it's going to be there. So this is like going to the pet store and you get your small lizard, right? Several years later, several developers later, that cluster no longer has 4 or 5 elements. Now it's a huge cluster, and I went tame on that. It could be a lot bigger. So what started with a small lizard ended up with a Clusterosaurus rex or Clustercilla. Has anybody dealt with Clustercilla? Yeah? And it's really hard, once you already have it, it's really hard to tame it. And it brings a lot of other problems, like unit testing. If you're trying to unit test that VI, and that cluster keeps changing, that means that your unit test, if you're using unit test framework especially, keeps breaking. So now the developers say you are putting an obstacle, right? Because unit testing is hard. No. Your code was not developed with testability in mind, and you ended up with this huge cluster. If you were just providing the inputs you needed, you could still use in-place element structure outside and just provide to the VI the inputs it needs. It makes that VI testable, it makes it readable, and it keeps Godzilla away. Okay?
Why not use a class?
Or you could use a class.
I'd also argue it limits the reusability.
What was that?
It also limits reusability.
Yeah, it limits reusability because now if you wanted to reuse that VI, but it has all these other added inputs that you don't need, then it causes a problem. All right, so stay away from that guy. So is it really red or white? It is really more like gray, pinkish, yellow, whatever you want to call it. How important each detail is will depend on your team. It also is going to depend on what your product does. At Delacor, we do the DQMH. We have a different set of VI analyzer configuration files, for example, when we're dealing with project templates. It's not the same to be writing code that you guys then are going to use as developers, and I have to worry about the developer experience, than writing an executable, where the only people that are going to be maintaining it is our team. Can you guys see the difference? So you have to make sure that it's what's important for the team. Remember that developers are people, so you won't find something that will please them all. You're going to have these discussions. Yes, I know engineers, we don't like to talk. You're going to have to talk to each other and find out what works. Templates. Okay, another little story from my guy here. I can code a producer-consumer in less than 5 minutes with my eyes shut. So this is a real story. I was teaching advanced architecture in LabVIEW, and a guy said, templates. I don't need templates. I can do a producer-consumer in 5 minutes. And I said, okay, you can keep your eyes open. I'll time you. And I timed him. I gave him 5 minutes. And I'm going to show you the code he created. And I'm going to flash it and then go back. And I want you guys to tell me what's wrong with it. Okay? You guys ready? Okay, what was wrong with that code? Oh, everybody got it. You know, that's the problem with doing dry runs in the small living room. So everybody got it. Well, kind of drives my punchline. Normally what happens when I show this slide in a smaller room, not a big screen, people go to the typical things. Oh, you're not handling the errors of the lower loop. Oh, you're not sending the messages from the lower loop to the upper loop. Like the typical things that you know to look for on a producer-consumer. And they're so busy checking the right hand of the block diagram that they don't realize that the DQ is outside of the while loop. What I want to drive here is, why spend time troubleshooting the bugs that a template could prevent? I hear, well, but a template limits creativity, right? Because I'd rather start from a white BI and now I have this piece of white BI that I can now make a great piece of art out of it. I would rather you limit your creativity to actually solving the problem at hand and not reinventing the wheel that we have already invented several times. Now, I'm not saying the templates, like the basic templates, I'm talking more about project templates and stuff like that. So, again, let's try to be kind and not get to these extremes. All right. So, in interest of time, I'm gonna skip the video. If you guys are interested on seeing how DQMH works, we're gonna be doing a presentation on Wednesday. The main thing is the DQMH lets you create a library that has everything that makes it work, like where you press the close button, it stops the VI. And one of the things that we're doing for the next version of DQMH is we've heard people say, well, I like DQMH, but I'd rather the cluster will be a class. And actually, this video shows changing the cluster as a class. And what we've done is 3.0 will let you create your own DQMH module and still use our scripting tools. So you will create the DQMH module, and then the next time you go and say new for module, instead of giving you just my singleton and my clonable, it will give you the option of your own module. If we have time at the end, and if people are interested, I'll show you the video. But what I want to say here, go ahead.
This is like Goop providers.
Yeah. Yes. And the main thing here is invest time on figuring out what's the commonality between all the projects you work on. And instead of going back and finding the last project you did, doing a save as, and deleting things, it's better to start with a nice core that addresses all the little things, and now you just have to focus on resolving the problem at hand. Make sense? So you want to automate repetitive tasks. Things that can help you automate repetitive tasks. Quick drop, right-click menus, creating wizards, not forgetting about all the little things. Example, we have in our template on the DQMH, the main PI shows you the version number. So when you build an executable, you get the version from the executable. It's a little thing, but it becomes very useful when you are doing releases to the customer and they're complaining about a bug that you think you fixed. You can ask them, what version are you running? And they can tell you immediately. That same template, when you press the close window, it stops the application. Those are little things that you don't have to be teaching your junior developers to not forget. The template takes care of it. So how many of you are using templates? Right. How many of you are using project templates? Okay. So project templates is like, using templates is already good. Using project templates is like graduated. So this is the other demo that I have that if we have time I can show, or if you guys want I can give you a one-on-one demo. So the other thing that we added for DQMH is one of the things that people like about DQMH is the scripting of creation of user events. But they wanted to use it without creating a DQMH module, right? So 3.0 lets you create a library of user events with the scripting tools that you have seen on DQMH. So you can use it with your actor-oriented programming code, with your whatever you're using. So again, if you guys want to see a demo. The main thing I want to drive with this is automating tasks. Making sure that you do code, so if you find yourself doing the same thing 3-4 times, it just does it for you. Again, I see more the templates and the scripting tools as removing obstacles so the developer can focus on creating. So how to improve developer experience? Determine what is good for your team. Create a style guideline that incorporates what your team values. Do code reviews. Run BI Analyzer. Don't be afraid of it. Darren has an excellent presentation that you can actually see online that shows what type of bugs BI Analyzer can find, especially code unused, wires that seem to be connected that are not connected, things like that. Create custom BI Analyzer tests. If you're complaining every time about your junior developers or even some advanced developers forgetting to handle error 43 when using File Explorer, create a BI Analyzer for that. There's no need to be spending time on hitting the same course. So my 5 tips for happier, more productive developers. Style guideline, minimal BI Analyzer configuration, code reviews, and talk to people. Define unit tests. And as the project evolves, make sure that you're asking continuously the customer and the other members of your team, are we delivering what was asked and is needed? Sometimes the customer doesn't really know what they don't want until they see it. Sometimes they don't know what they really need until you mention it. So asking questions when they are having a new requirement and seeing really why is it that you want to do this. Sometimes taking a step back might actually find out that they didn't really need the complicated thing that they're asking for. So ask a lot of questions, communicate. So I'm going to close with this. In Mexico, I was born in Mexico and raised. Mexico City, we had lots of earthquakes. So we had these signs everywhere. I don't scream, meaning I don't panic. I don't run, I don't push. Right? And how do they address this? They have practice drills. So when I was a kid, every 2 or 3 months there would be an alarm and we would practice. I don't scream, I don't run, I don't push. Why do we do drills? To prove that when the actual event happens, in the case of the event happening, I know I have enough time to get from here to there without screaming, without pushing, right? So why am I saying this? Sometimes we wait until we have an FDA customer, right? Or a military aerospace customer that is requiring all these quality things to put them in place. My take is try to start doing better code, better processes as an everyday thing. So in the case of an impending deadline or one of those customers that actually requires those FDA and all those things, you already know that you don't panic, you don't cut corners, and you do push and commit frequently, okay? So, improving developer experience improves team harmony, leads to higher quality, practice every day, so it is second nature when it's needed. It is a path to building high-quality applications and improving efficiency. So you can learn more on these other presentations, and I think I do have time for questions. Yes. Some questions? Wow. I put you all to sleep. Did you guys learn anything today? Examples, just so I can sleep well at night.
Might give a second chance to BI Analyzer.
Give a second chance to BI Analyzer, Darren. You're welcome. Communication. We were talking about this. This is actually I should mention this. One of the things I've been called the LabVIEW marriage counselor because I go to these teams and I have the old timers sitting at the same table, and one of them wants to use functional global variables for everything. The other one wants to use globals for everything. The other one wants to use classes for everything. And you cannot have that in a team, right? You cannot have your leadership, your technical leaders, pointing in different directions. So what I do is I sit them in a room and be like, okay, You tell me, like for example, we did that on the exercise, right? Yeah, actually that's a valid reason if you have memory leaks, or yes, the class should be there. So let's start discussing this and listen to each other. And you start finding out and also acknowledging since the beginning, I know you have been doing this more than I have. I know that you can produce code that works and runs. I know that you have been selling it. I understand all of these things. I also know that you want to be better and you want your applications to be works of art and that you value your work and you appreciate your work. So let's see how we can work together to make that work even better. If we have that discussion, and I understand that these people have something, and I've always learned from these discussions, there's always something like just now, I didn't know, I need now to go check. It's very important that you do that you talk to your team, not just say, I went to NI Week and I found out about Actor Framework and now that's what we're going to use. Let's discuss it as a team and understand what are the benefits and what are the challenges. Anything else? What was that?
Your time for the Room 15 presentation was on second.
What time is wrong?
The Tuesday, Room 15, section 215.
It's 2:15? Oh, sorry. I'll fix it. The project templates? Thank you.
Hey, Fab,
Yes.
a question.
Yes.
You do your customer employee team building, but once in a while you'll have people who don't want or fail to cooperate. How do you address this?
So the question is, how do you address customers when we do this customer is part of the team thing? How do I address that? I fire them if they don't want to cooperate. No, I think I'm pretty clear when we start working and together. As in, you really have to be part of the team. And well, Chris, I think has a better way of describing this. We have a couple of customers that have been more challenging than others because they have their own style guideline, they have their own methods. And I think really it just boils down to the proof is in the pudding. It's like, okay, we'll do it your way. Let us do it our way. Let's compare both things. Let's do benchmarking. Like that's a typical one. Some people have ideas that were well-founded on LabVIEW 2, LabVIEW 4, LabVIEW 7. And the compiler has evolved, but there's still coding like if it was LabVIEW 7. Because long time ago I had this issue, right? So they're going to be very strong about those types of things because they live them. So it's not like the typical one is I don't want to use classes because there's a lot of SOBI calling, and then the SOBI it's a hit on the call on the compiler. And it's like, no, it's not like it is. It might be, yes, there is more work from the compiler on calling a SOBI than it would be to calling the code directly on the block diagram, but it's not what it was on LabVIEW 4, where it was really unusable, right? But that you can only prove if you do benchmarking.
What's your process to do code review?
What's our process to do code review? First thing is you need to run BI Analyzer. We don't want to be wasting time at the code review time for me to be pointing out, the error, you're not handling errors, or you're not handling error 43. Like those things that we know that we already addressed, those need to be addressed before the code review. When we start the code review, the first thing we do is review the result test from the BI Analyzer. You're not going to be able to fix everything. So which ones did you ignore and why? And then once we pass that, okay, now take me through a tour of your code. You explain how things work. I point out things, and then we put any issues that need to be addressed or need to be investigated. We do the bookmark with the to-do code review. And the most important thing, even more important than doing code reviews. Well, first of all, what's the best code review? It's the one that actually happens. Second of all, even better than the code review that actually happens. Does anybody know what's even better than that?
One way you fix the things that you found.
When you actually fix the things that you found. I work with developers at code review number 3, and the issue's still there. So That's very frustrating for all parts. And we found that doing the little orange labels has reduced that a lot.
One thing we do now before our code for the VI anyway, is make sure we export the repository onto a vanilla machine, and that's saved a bit of time.
Yes, that's a big thing. Steve Watts is saying, by the way, you people don't know Steve Watts, he wrote Software Engineering Approach to LabVIEW. Anyway, all right. And speaking of being successful at doing code using action engines, you have to talk to him. Anyhow, the point is, we have to make sure that we export our repository to a clean machine. Why is that important? You might have forgotten or accidentally put a dependency directly to your computer. Or you forgot to push it, you forgot to commit it. And now you think that everything is done, and then when you check it out on a different machine, it turns out that you forgot these things or it doesn't work. What we do is we have a build computer. It can either be a physical computer, it can be a VM, it can be an Amazon instance. But you want to have a build machine. And it is, and the build machine should have a big sign that says, no development done here, right? It's just for building. And the reason for that is that you do a checkout. You make sure that you don't have any broken arrows, that you have all your dependencies, and you build there. There's no, oh, but it works on my machine. If I build from my machine, it works. But it doesn't work on Joe's machine, so that's not a good process. So having a build computer. Are you adding, Fabiola, you're coming again and adding all these obstacles. It actually saves you time. Yes, you have, and computers are cheap nowadays, and Amazon instances are cheap. It's actually going to be saving you lots of headaches of forgetting dependencies and things like that. And if you do continuous integration, even better, right, Alan? Anything else? Any more comments? All right, guys, I expect to see every one of you on Wednesday when I'm going to be talking about DQMH. If you guys want to see any of the videos that I had, feel free. I'll be here all week, and I'll stick around if anyone wants to talk to us directly. Thank you.